Hi guys, it is Aoife from Words of Clover and I'm here today to talk about some books that I would love to be adapted either into movies or TV series or something on screen that we could all enjoy and watch. So the first book I want to talk about is Idol by Louise O'Neill. This book is a really interesting book that kind of, I think, would divide people in what they think of the character, what they think of the storyline, and particularly what they think of the ending. And in this book we are following a woman who is kind of like an influencer. She's a little bit like, almost like she has kind of like, she kind of gave like Gwyneth Paltrow Goop style like influencing in terms of like kind of some shady like health and well-being advice. There's a lot of like meditation and spiritual healing and stuff going on with her and what she's telling like her followers to do. So at the start of the book she's just brought out this new book, or this essay. It's either an essay or a new book where she's talking about a sexual encounter she had with a friend, with a female friend, and how, you know, she's kind of talking about, I guess, her first foray into maybe like thinking about like maybe her sexuality or bisexuality or whatever it is. She ends up getting an email from this female friend who was her best friend growing up, who she hasn't talked to in years, and the female friend's experience or memory of this sexual experience that the two of them shared is very, very different. And in her mind, this experience was basically sexual assault, and she's very traumatized by this experience, and she's telling her like, you know, stop talking about this, you have to retract it, like, or I will tell people what you really did to me. And she is like shocked and stunned, and she's like, no, there's no way that like she is thinking about it like this, when in my head it was something beautiful, it was something we shared, it was something lovely. And she ends up going back to her hometown, to her parents' house, to reconnect with this friend and to kind of see, like, you know, to kind of reconnect and also talk about what happened between them. It kind of brings back a lot of like memories of their childhood and of their being teenage years and stuff they did, and we just see a lot of like how the character has, why she is the way she is, and maybe some trauma or some like relationship issues she has, and how she has kind of soured all the relationships in her life with the way she's acted. And she's not this maybe like free-spirited, kind, generous person that she portrays herself to be, but she's actually quite dark and can be quite cruel and selfish in many different ways. I think this one would just be like a really good one for like a mini series, kind of like a dark kind of dramatic TV series. I think it would be done really, really well. I think there's so much that you could explore within the world of being an influencer or a content creator, and also the world of cancel culture as well. I think there's so much to be explored within this story. I think it would work so well on TV. Another book I would really love, maybe for like a mini TV series as well, I kind of said it when I was reviewing it, and that was Other Women by Emma Flint. This is a book that takes place in London in the 1920s, and we are following a character called Beatrice, who's one of these women who was kind of like, after the war, so many men died in the war that there's like kind of a whole group of women who are now in like their 30s or early 40s that are basically like on the shelf. They're kind of have accepted that they are going to be spinsters for the rest of their life, that they're not going to have like a husband to support them, they're not going to have family or children. And Beatrice is one of these women, and she feels kind of bitter about it in many ways, and also just very sad and down about it, because she obviously would have loved to have a family and to have a relationship, married life. And she ends up meeting a new man who joins her work, and his name is Mr. Ryan, and the two of them end up forming a relationship, but he is actually married, so it's like very, very complicated. And then we end up getting the story told in two parts. Our past part is with Beatrice and her relationship with Mr. Ryan, and we see her falling in love with him and all the nice things he's saying to her. And then our future storyline, or our present storyline, is with Mrs. Ryan, who is obviously Mr. Ryan's wife, and she is following the court case of her husband, who's been accused of murder of Beatrice. And we are kind of finding out between the two of them what happened to Beatrice, how she ended up dead, is Mr. Ryan actually, you know, guilty of her murder, and what Mrs. Ryan's feelings about the whole thing are, how she feels towards Beatrice as like a murdered woman, but also the mistress of her husband, and how she feels about her husband, who she obviously loves but has betrayed her in like a really horrible way. But is he just an adulterer, or is he also a murderer? So we see that storyline play out, and just the way that this book is done in terms of like obviously the past storyline of Beatrice and Mr. Ryan, and then the present storyline of like the courtroom drama and the court scandal, and the way obviously this is like the 20s, so the court room in general and how people are allowed to behave and stuff like that is very different to how people be able to behave now. And the way like women were treated at this time as well, is really like people were, just because Mr. Ryan is a man and Beatrice was this woman who was going out with a man who was married and also obviously having sexual relationships with him outside of marriage, everyone just looked at her and said, oh well, she was guilty, she probably pushed him into hurting her accidentally, so it's her fault that she ended up dead, this kind of stuff. And we see how people react to certain things in the courtroom, what's being said, and how basically the misogynistic like era that was around kind of women, and particularly women like outside of marriage, particular types of women. I just thought it was really gripping, and I just loved the time period it was set in, the time era it was set in, the 20s in London post World War One. I think it would just be such a good kind of like, I don't know whether you could call it a period drama, but I think it would, there's so many elements of it I think that would just play really well. I think you get some really good actresses to play the two women on either side. I think it would be really good. Next book is one that I feel like ever came out on TV or something, it's one that I would need a lot of money behind, and not in the way of like the Rings of Power or whatever. Like there was so much money behind that and it is like so shit. So like we need really good attention to detail, really good stunts, like everything. And that is Jade City by Fonda, or just like the Jade trilogy. I think this would be so cool on like, this could be like Game of Thrones level, like successful TV show if they did it right, if they had the right actors, like gave it the attention it deserved. I think it would be so good. This is like urban fantasy. We're in a kind of Asian inspired kind of small island country where they mine these kind of stone called jade, which can give people, a certain type of people, almost kind of like magical abilities, in terms of like it kind of gives them like super strength or super they're able to like sense what people are feeling and stuff like that. And we see how this kind of country is basically run by these kind of like mafia gangs, and we're following the story of one of these mafia gangs as the younger people rise to power, kind of become the head person in this gang, and how there's this like gang warfare with a rival gang ends up happening, and it basically ends up like spanning like 20 to 30 years. And we are following characters from the time they were in like their 20s, and by the time we finish the series they're like in their 40s and 50s. Like we follow them for like so much of their life. We see them like with grief, with loss, with love, like having families, their children growing up. We see so much of it, and there are so many like amazing fight scenes, and you could have such incredible like stuntmen on this show. If you were to make it into a show, it'd be so cool. The magic bits in it are like minimal enough that like if you had the right stunt people, it would look really good and like really believable. There's so much just like political mastermind aspect of it. It would just be so good. I think you'd have so many twists and turns in it. You could really shock people with some of like the deaths and some of the reveals and some of the backstabbing and stuff that happens in this. It would be so good. And some of the underdogs and stuff as well. I think it would be so good. Another one I'd love to see in kind of either movie or something like that is There's Been a Little Instant by Alice Ryan. This is a book that when I read it, it really reminded me just in terms of like the family dynamics in it. It reminded me of The Snapper, which is a book by Ronnie Doyle, but it's also a very well-loved Irish movie. And it definitely reminded me of The Snapper in so many ways. We're following a family, and there is a cousin in this family called Molly, and she has gone missing again. So they say there's been a little incident, Molly's gone missing, we don't know where she is. And Molly lost both of her parents, but by the time she turned 18, she had lost both of her parents. And she obviously really struggles with this. She is dealing with a lot of grief, a lot of loss and trauma in her life. And she sometimes just like ups and leaves and doesn't tell anyone where she is, and this is one of those times. And the family are really worried about her. There's some who are saying like, no, she'll be fine, like she'll come back when she wants to. And then there's others, particularly the Uncle John, who's kind of like the leading patriarch of the family. He's saying, no, like we have to bring her back, like she's our family, we have to go and find her. And then it turns out that Molly had been living in London, and there was this woman who had disappeared in London, another Irish girl. And it kind of ends up where Molly may have been the last person to see this young woman alive before she left as well. So there's also this second kind of urgency to finding Molly, to see if she what she knows about this girl, this other girl who's gone missing, and if she could answer any, questions that people have about what happened to this other girl. So we're seeing all of that. But I just loved the family dynamic of this so much. The Uncle John, who's like the head of the family in this, is just, I wanted to hug him so much. It was just so lovely the way he was described. Him and his wife were never able to have children, and we see how like that was obviously really, really sad for them, and they really struggled with that. But then the way he kind of adopts all his nieces and nephews, and in many ways he is a father figure to them, and he loves them so, so much and will do anything for them, that like in many ways, like the two of them, John and his wife, have children, even if it's not like biological children of theirs. All their nieces and nephews are like their children, and just the way it was portrayed in the story was just like so, so lovely. And then we have one of the aunties who's kind of like an aunt by marriage, and people have like certain ideas about her, that she's a little bit like up herself, and she she kind of feels like they think that maybe she's not like a real part of the family, and we see how she realizes that she actually is a real part of the family, and people love her and accept her for exactly who she is. And for the first time in like forever, she ends up letting down her guard in many ways, and actually allowing herself to be completely herself, but also allowing herself to be loved and to love in return. And it's so lovely. And then there's two characters in this as well, two cousins who are called is it Damien and Noel, and they're called Blur and Oasis, and I just thought that was really funny. Family, the love in it is so lovely, but there's so many lovely like Irishisms in it, and that I just love, that reminded me of The Snapper. I would love for this to be made in kind of the same style as The Snapper, so we have kind of almost like a new generation's The Snapper. Then another book that I'm actually really surprised has never been properly adapted, and that's The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien. I talk about this book all the time, but it was adapted into like a play, or like a stage show, which I did see, which was really, really excellent. But I would love for this to be like a proper like TV show that like RTE or someone would do properly and give it like, again, the attention it deserves. I think this is such a like an interesting foray into a time in Ireland where being a woman, you were very stifled and you had to behave a certain way. It was the time of, mother and baby homes in Ireland, if you behaved certain ways as well. The Catholic Church was very, very strong. But you see these two girls, Baba and Kate, and their friendship and their just hijinks, and they just want to go to Dublin and meet men and go dancing and have a few drinks and basically live a life they would have been able to live like right now. But back then, it was probably still a little bit frowned upon. And like this was just such a turning point, I think, in terms of Irish literature as well, and in particular like Irish woman's voice in literature. Like, as I said, Edna O'Brien walked, so people like Sally Rooney could run. I think to have like a proper TV show of this, and just showcasing Ireland in the 50s and later, I think it would just be so, so interesting, and I would just love it so much. I think it would be so good in as a TV series. So those are some books that I would really love to be adapted. I would love to know if you guys have any books that you think would be really good movies or TV shows or anything, or ones that you would recommend for me to read. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.